Hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. Before we get started, there are a couple things I want to run through. First, you'll notice the thing behind me. It's a chair. It's very nice. We spent about 10 minutes figuring out how to get the camera at the right angle to record, and I was like, well, wait a minute, couldn't I just raise the chair? So I did, and here we are. But, into something a little more relevant. Last we left off with a couple of hints, so I think I should go over that. First off, you're thinking about this rationally. That is a direct line from Trevor. And as you can clearly tell by the title, we're going over GTA 5. So, yes, you're thinking about this rationally is a direct quote from Trevor from the game, and the hint roguelike was kind of mean, I'm gonna be honest, because I knew most people would immediately think, oh, it's a roguelike game. Right, which is a style of video game for those who aren't familiar. No, the characters are roguelike. They steal. Because you got Rogue from D&D and then GTA Theft Auto. Yeah, you know. I'm a bad person, it's okay. But today we're going to be discussing Michael. So, let's jump right into it, shall we? Starting off with strength. There's not a ton to go off of here, aside from... I'm just gonna go ahead and say spoiler alert, just to cover my bases. It's not really a spoiler for anything, but like, whatever. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. You have the whole punching people, and then punching things. And by things, I mean windows.
Yeah.
And maybe the average wall, if you misclick.
Yeah.
So yeah, story-wise, we're talking about bashing in a window to get into a building or something like that. But I'm mainly talking about when he punches out Simeon early on in the story. And like aside from that, we don't really have a whole lot to go off of. Like aside from just punching people every so often and then breaking into things. So, yeah. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm going based off of story instead of individualistic player actions. Right? Because in-game, you have options to do things like tennis or golf, both of which would take more strength than not. Golf isn't really like the most strength excruciating activity ever. I can say that having played golf. But I would put it with strength more than dexterity. That could just be me though. It's not just me. But like, yeah, those are player activities. So I never did either of them in the game when I played. Someone else, however, might really enjoy playing those mini games, so they might do it more. And that's just kind of an individualistic player thing, and I can't really account for that, so I'm going based off of the story. And based off of the story, you have punching people and punching windows. So, because of that, there's not really a whole lot of information to go off of. So for the score, if you wanted a kind of an unbiased and like accurate score, I would go with 10, just because of the lack of information. But, given the couple of options we have, something like 12, theoretically 14, could make sense. I'll leave that up to you. I would probably be safe and go with 10 or 12. But if you're like, yeah, Michael punches things, and you want to give him 14, to each his own. Into dexterity. I would argue that Michael has a little bit more dexterity than strength. Could just be me. I would argue this for a couple of reasons. First off, guns in D&D are more dex-based, usually. Theoretically, something like a shotgun could be strength-based. I don't know. I would probably make that more of a dexterity saving throw instead, though. But, neither here nor there. The gun mechanics of your game are going to be yours to create, really. Because there are so many different ways you can do it, and so many different types. It would just get crazy for me to try to list every single gun and what it would equate to in a D&D setting. That would be insane. But, on average, the way we know it now, in D&D, guns are usually a little more dexterity-based. Then you have the whole... What'd you call it? It wouldn't be a catwalk. No. But the rappel suit?
I
guess it would just be a rappel.
Yeah, the grappling suit, yeah.
Grapple, there we go. That's probably a better word for it. But, like, you have that mission from the story, which is early on and not really spoiling a whole lot. But I would say that would take a little bit of dexterity just to be able to right yourself, be able to do the things that he needed to do in the story to be able to get to where he needed to be, things like that. So it's just that sort of thing. Then you have the generalistic build, which is the last thing that I really have to go off of. How he's kind of thinner, a little more lean, a little bit of a dad bod going on, but not huge. So it's just kind of like the build, the generalistic style of him kind of leans itself more towards dodging and striking when he has an opportunity, rather than just, I'm going to walk in there and beat things. Like someone like Trevor would do.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, all in all, I would say this leans himself to a little bit more dexterity than it does strength. So I would go with somewhere like 16 to 18. I say that because that's his build, but that's not his only thing that he can do. So, to reiterate, dexterity score somewhere around 16 to 18. Into Constitution, I have nothing to go off of here, if I'm being honest, because you have different things that can affect your stamina and health in game, but those are player decisions, like I've already mentioned. You get cycling, swimming, the sports, different things like that. And then health and health regen specifically can be done by snacks and that sort of thing. In general, your health regen is a little bit over time, up to half. So yeah, that stuff isn't really affected by Constitution like it is in D&D. So I don't really have a whole lot to go off of there because it's all individualistic player activities and actions. But I can kind of compare Michael to everyone else. So if we're doing that, it would kind of be, his score for Constitution would be 10 if you were going based off of lack of information, and somewhere probably around 12, maybe 14 if you were going based off of everyone else. Because he's not the main tank of the group. He doesn't just run in and take all the hits and all the aggro. He can take a hit or two, and he does take some of the aggro sometimes, especially when Trevor is the one aggro. You know?
I can think of one time that shows Michael's Constitution in a bad way.
Hit me up with it.
And spoiler alert.
Thank you. 3, 2, 1. You should be good.
It is it's the main reason as to why the family moves out the house whenever Jimmy drugs him.
Yeah. That's actually a good point. Where, yeah, so like intoxication, and that actually brings me to another thing where you get intoxicated and it does the wavy screen thing. Now most of the time those are player activities though.
Yeah.
But that is in the story when Jimmy drugs Michael. So yeah, that's a good point. You could kind of go either way then. So you could say the score is anywhere between 8 to 12, depending on you think he takes a few more hits, Jimmy drugs, or lack of information in between. So thank you for that. That was actually really helpful. Moving into intelligence. This is where I would say Michael would kind of start to separate himself from everyone else. He's able to, well, gather information and get intel. He's pretty good. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. We should be good. The whole story kind of sparks from what Michael knows. And who Michael knows. So, I want to go over the who first. Michael knows Lester, he meets Franklin, he knows Trevor, and he knows Dave. One of those is not like the others. But yeah, so he can get jobs and get what he needs because of Lester. He has a lot of help on his adventures because he knows Franklin and Trevor. And he knows how to deal with Trevor as well. So that's kind of an interesting aspect as well. But then you have the fact that he knows Dave. And I did say spoiler alert, but we're going to wait just another second just to be 100% safe. And the whole story kind of spawns from Michael knowing Dave, specifically though knowing what Dave has done for Michael and what Michael has done for Dave. Where Dave will go in and lie for Michael or help him out in different ways, and Michael is expected to repay the favor in kind. And that's kind of where you get the whole GTA 5 story, at least from Michael's perspective. So it's almost one of those he knows too much for his own good sort of situations. Right? But that point being, he knows a lot. So because of that, I'm going to put his intelligence at somewhere around 16 to 18, possibly 20 by the end of it. into wisdom. It's kind of what Michael does with what he knows that hits a hiccup, we'll say. He knows how to deal with Trevor, right. He's got that wisdom to be able to kind of, for the most part, calm down those situations and help out. But then you have the wisdom of rushing into things. Michael's pretty bad about that. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. When he tries to tackle Fabiano, I forget the exact name, but it's one of those two.
Fabian?
He says it weird. I'm saying Fabian because that's the way he says it. I think it's Fabiano, though. Could be wrong. But it is like right around there. But more accurately, when he takes a winch and like rips a dude's house down, Three Little Pigs style, like, that probably wasn't a good call. I get it. You're mad at the tennis instructor. Wait a minute. You really think a tennis instructor is going to be able to afford that house? Hold on. Just wait. So it's things like that where it's like, you're just rushing into something and you're not really thinking it through, and it does wind up going bad for you. So, if you wanted to kind of get a good versus bad score, it would be depending on what you're talking about. If you're talking about his crew and how to calm down his situations at work, it would be pretty good wisdom. He's pretty good at that sort of thing, so somewhere around 14. But if you're talking about family and just reactive issues, he's not super great at thinking those through all the time, so it'd probably be somewhere closer to like 6. So put that in a numeric order, 6 to 14 for the score on wisdom. Am I good there? Did I miss anything?
Nah, that's all good.
Cool. Moving into charisma. It's kind of the same thought process, where he's really good at talking down his companions, his work friends, but then when it comes to family issues, as we've mentioned, not super great. So spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. He can't really talk his family out of leaving, right? But he can talk Trevor down from committing huge crimes and theoretically murder into only taking an embarrassing video of, what was his name? The fame or shame guy.
Laszlo.
Yeah.
Laszlo.
I forget the last name, but I don't really think it was important. But yeah, so it's just like things like that, where at work, he's really good at calming situations, keeping everyone relatively level-headed, as much as Trevor can be, but at home, kind of slips and falls apart. So, take your pick there. I would give a similar score, 14 or 6, depending on who he's dealing with. So in numeric order, 6 to 14 for the charisma score as well. We good there? Can I move into builds?
Yeah.
Perfect. Starting off with a straightforward build, you're going to want to go human. Obviously, I would go the normal human because that gives you a +1 to everything, and he's, at best, relatively average at most things, and pretty good at some others. At worst, not super good rolls. But, you know, kind of how it goes. Aside from that, you're going to want to go for the class. You're going to want to go Rogue until level 11 and Fighter until level 9. We're going to start with Rogue. You want to go Rogue specifically for, as it's reliable talent, right? Is that what it's called?
For the thing?
Yeah, the ability to roll counted as a 10 for the computer. Yeah. So you go for that, just because that's really good. Then after that, or you're gonna want to go Mastermind for the Rogue subclass. And essentially that just gives you information about your targets and your ability to grift your way out of situations. After that, for 9 levels, you're going to want to go Fighter. You're going to want to go specifically Archery for guns, and Gunslinger also because guns. If for whatever reason you can't go Gunslinger because you don't want to, because you're crazy, or your DM won't allow you because they're evil, those are jokes, by the way. But if you can't go Gunslinger for whatever reason, I believe it's Champion. Gives you an easier time critting. So you're gonna want to go with that instead. Did I get the subclass right?
Mastermind?
No, for Fighter.
Oh,
Champion, I believe. It's the last bullet.
Not.
It's there.
Yes, it is. Yeah, Champion.
Cool, Champion. moving into the conceptual build. I wrestled with this for a minute because I wanted to give you more than just min-maxing, go wood elf or whatever for plus dex and wisdom, or actually be high elf because you want to go plus dex and intelligence, but whatever. So I thought about it for a minute, and I wound up saying go with changeling for the race. Sure, you can do wood elf or high elf, but changeling makes more sense story-wise because the entire story, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good, is about how Michael is wrestling with his true identity and how he's trying to change who he used to be to become the person he wants to be for his family. That's profound and deep, and that's not what I do here. So we're going to move on from that. What I say next may very well be the dumbest thing I've ever said. That's not true. I've said it way dumber. But for the conceptual class, we're going to go Paladin. Now, before you go, what and Alt F4, allow me to explain. I said spoiler alert, but we're going to do it again. 3, 2, 1. We should be good. A lot of his story revolves around wanting to get revenge or vengeance on those who have wronged him, as well as wanting to adhere to what is going to be his new moral code for when he can finally change into the person he wants to be for his family. Paladin, Oath of Vengeance, fits that, where you have the code that you follow as a paladin, but it's also about extracting revenge on people that have recently wronged you. So Paladin Oath of Vengeance does, you want to go fighting style. I said defense because archery wasn't an option for me. If you can go archery, do that instead because guns. But if you can't, defense works pretty well. What that does is if you're wearing AC, it gives you an extra just little boost, which is always nice. But what the Paladin itself does is allow you to cast Vow of Enmity, which allows you to hit a specific person who has the Vow of Enmity on them, as well as gain more attacks against them at later levels. And that's aside from things like healing and smite from Paladins. So all of which are good, but that's kind of what the Vow of Enmity itself gives you. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got. Now at later levels, the one thing I just remembered, at later levels you get a flight speed, which doesn't really it doesn't make sense. You could kind of argue they can skydive and fly No, it doesn't work. But that's why it's the conceptual build, because in the game itself, Michael couldn't cast spells. But now he can. Yeah. So, did I miss anything? I think I'm good.
No, it looks like we got everything.
Cool. That is all I have for you fine adventurers today. Be on the lookout for my next video, which will be on Trevor. If you can't possibly wait until then, feel free to check out my Discord or come hang out on Twitch. Other than that, I will catch you all later.